In 2008, a teenager was hiking through a dense forest in Northern California. That evening, he decided to stop and make camp for the night. He stepped several hundred feet off the main trail, weaving through the trees, until he found a small clearing. Here, he set up his tent. By nightfall, he was inside, drifting off to sleep. Hours later, he woke up. He thought he'd heard something outside, but his tent had no windows, and outside, it was pitch black. He couldn't see a thing. So he just lay there, listening, trying to figure out what was moving out there in the dark. Then, he heard it again. Footsteps. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, the dark, and the mysterious, told in story format, you're in the right place. That's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's your thing, please hide a Bluetooth speaker in the like button's bedroom and play Siberian Husky screaming audio at full blast all night long. Also, make sure you're subscribed with all notifications on, so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. In 2007, a now famous cult classic film Into the Wild was released. The movie, based on a true story, follows a young man named Christopher McCandless. In 1990, Christopher graduated from a prestigious school with honors. By all accounts, he could have pursued a high-paying career, but that's not what he wanted. Christopher craved freedom. So, without telling his parents, he gave away all his possessions. He donated his savings to charity and set off for Alaska to live completely off the grid. Eventually, he found an abandoned, rusted-out bus deep in the Alaskan wilderness and made it his shelter. While Christopher's fate was heartbreaking, Into the Wild focused on his unrelenting spirit, his relentless pursuit of freedom. By the end of the movie, audiences didn't just feel sad. They felt inspired to take risks, to seek adventure before it was too late. One of those inspired viewers was an 18-year-old from Oregon, Matt Higgins. Matt was about to graduate high school. Unlike most of his classmates, he had no idea what came next: job, college, something else. But after watching Into the Wild, a third option appeared. He could go into the wild himself. Matt's plan: graduate in 2007. Then, in the spring of 2008, hike the entire California section of the Pacific Crest Trail alone. This stretch, about 1,700 miles, started at the Mexican border, wound through deserts and mountains, past dangerous wildlife, and ended at the Oregon border. It wasn't a beginner's hike. But Matt wasn't a beginner. He'd grown up hiking and camping across Oregon and the western U.S., from safe, well-marked areas to remote, dangerous regions with cougars, bears, and treacherous cliffs. He felt ready. And, in many ways, he was. In spring 2008, Matt flew to Southern California, traveled to the border of Mexico, and began hiking north. For weeks, his routine was simple: hike all day, set up camp just off the trail at night, eat, sleep, repeat. He only faced two small setbacks: mild dehydration once, and nearly stepping on a rattlesnake. It was dense. Towering trees crowded the trail like dark, silent walls. Matt walked slowly, enjoying the peace, the chirping birds, the quiet hum of insects. Then, the trail curved sharply. He rounded the bend and froze. 20 feet away, off to the right, sat a huge boulder. On it were two middle-aged people, a man and a woman, dressed head to toe in white. They were filthy, disheveled. The man had a wild, unkempt beard, and both of them were staring at Matt, not blinking, not smiling. He quickly looked down, kept walking, then forced a polite smile and waved. They didn't respond. Their eyes never left him. Even after he passed, he could feel them watching. Matt's stomach tightened. Why wouldn't they at least wave back? Out here, days could pass without seeing another soul. Basic trail etiquette was to greet each other. But he pushed it aside. Maybe they didn't speak English. Maybe they were just strange. That evening, as the sun set, he searched for a campsite. The trees were packed too tight along the trail, no room for a tent without blocking the path. So he pushed 300 feet into the forest, into a small clearing. He set up his tent, cooked a meal, tied his leftover food high in a tree to keep it away from bears, then zipped himself into his tent for the night. The forest fell silent. At dawn, he unzipped his tent. The light was dim, but enough to see one thing clearly. The bag of food was gone. He stepped out, scanned the ground. Nothing. No scraps, no bag. Gone. He hadn't heard a thing all night. But something or someone, had been here. Matt walked over to the tree where he had hung his food the night before, expecting to see deep paw prints pressed into the dirt. A bear, that had to be it. But as his eyes scanned the ground, his stomach dropped. There were no bear prints. Instead, 2 sets of human boot prints. And they weren't his. Before he could even make sense of that, he noticed something worse. The prints didn't just cluster under the tree. They stretched out, winding through the undergrowth, leading straight to his tent. All around his campsite, Matt froze, his mind racing. He'd gone to sleep in total darkness. Woken up at sunrise, still dim, but enough to see. Whoever these people were, they had found him hundreds of feet off the trail, in the middle of nowhere, in pitch black, and moved silently enough to not wake him. It didn't make sense. Then it clicked. The 2 figures he'd seen earlier, the man and woman in white, they must have followed him. They'd watched from the shadows until he fell asleep, and then crept in to steal his food. A cold wave of realization washed over him. If they could get this close without making a sound, maybe they were still here. He whipped his head around, scanning the trees, half expecting pale faces to appear from behind the trunks. Nothing. Yet, the prickling at the back of his neck told him he was being watched. Heart pounding, Matt began tearing down his campsite. No fumbling, no wasted motion, just a quiet, urgent rush. Then, trying to appear calm, he started for the trail. But his walk became a brisk pace. Every step, he expected them to leap from the shadows, a hand grabbing his shoulder. The forest felt too still. Finally, the narrow path opened in front of him. He glanced both ways. Empty. He exhaled, long and slow. They're gone, he told himself. The sun climbed higher. The dense woods gave way to wide, open fields. Sunlight spilled over him, and the paranoia eased. Maybe they had just been desperate, he reasoned. Maybe they needed the food more than he did. Over the next 3 days, he kept moving north through Lassen Forest. Sometimes he passed under thick canopies where the trees pressed close, other times across open meadows. And nothing happened. No strange figures. No thefts. The unease began to fade. But on the 4th day, it returned. That night, deep in another tangle of forest, Matt left the trail again, walking several hundred feet to a small clearing. This time, he set up more than just his tent. He built a crude perimeter of dry sticks around his camp. If anyone, man or beast, got close, they'd snap underfoot and wake him. Satisfied, he ate quickly, stored his remaining food, crawled into his tent, and drifted off. Do you want me to continue from here and finish this creepy section, keeping the tension rising? That way your AI voiceover won't have any awkward sponsor break gap. Here's that entire section rewritten so it flows like a professional suspense script, ready for a natural-sounding human voiceover. No story changes, just tightened pacing, vivid sensory detail, and emotional depth. He lies there, still, unsure why he woke. Did something move? Did something make a sound? Or was it just his imagination? He listens. At first, nothing. And then, a sharp crack. A stick breaking. Matt's pulse surges. He'd built that ring of sticks around his campsite. Something, or someone, is now just feet away. Slowly, carefully, he slides one arm out of his sleeping bag, feeling for his hunting knife. His fingers wrap around the handle. He brings it close, steadying his breathing. More footsteps. Whoever stepped on that stick isn't trying to be quiet. They're still coming, straight toward his tent. Matt's mind races. Maybe it's an animal, but the thought of those 2 people from days ago, creeping into his camp, circling his tent, slams into him. The footsteps grow louder. Closer. Until they stop. Right by his head. He's frozen in place, gripping the knife, every muscle tense. And then, whispering. But it's not coming from just one place. It's everywhere. Dozens of hushed voices bleeding from the dark forest in every direction. The figure outside begins to move, slow, deliberate steps circling the tent. Matt can hear the leaves shifting underfoot, the faint thud of boots pressing into dirt. The whispers grow frantic, like an unseen crowd surrounding him. Matt is paralyzed. He knows if anyone bursts through that thin nylon wall, the knife in his hand won't save him. And then, silence. No footsteps. No whispers. Nothing. It should feel like relief, but it doesn't. Because he hasn't heard anyone leave. Matt lies there, holding his breath. Maybe they're still out there, standing in the dark, waiting. He stays like that until the first pale light of dawn seeps through the fabric overhead. Finally, with trembling hands, he unzips the tent and peeks outside. No one, knife in hand. He steps out, scanning the trees, expecting to see pale faces peering back. But the forest is empty. For a moment, he wonders, did he dream it? Then he looks down. Boot prints, dozens of them, stamped deep into the soil, circling his tent in a perfect ring. It happened. He throws his gear together and bolts for the trail, heart hammering. He doesn't stop, not to drink, not to rest. All day he pushes himself north, convinced the only way to be safe is to get out of Lassen National Forest, to escape whatever territory the people in white call their own. By late afternoon, he burst from the trees into one of the small towns pressed against the forest's edge. That night, he camps just outside it, close enough to civilization to hear distant cars, a thin comfort against the memory of whispers in the dark. Lying in his tent, he replays it all. He's sure now, the people in white were behind it. The first time, stealing his food, he could understand. But this? Following him for days without being seen, sneaking hundreds of feet off the trail to find his camp, whispering from every direction, then disappearing without a sound. How? And why? By morning, he still has no answers. Only questions. He considers quitting, calling his family, ending the hike. But he's come too far, more than 1,600 miles. The finish line is just 100 miles away. He can't stop now. Shouldering his pack, Matt pushes on. His trail leads him into the deep green shadows of Mount Shasta Forest, a place much like Lassen, but with a far darker reputation. Do you want me to also rewrite the Mount Shasta missing persons part so it blends seamlessly into this buildup? That would make the next section hit even harder. The person they had been with was gone. No trace. Nothing. Just gone. And despite a massive search, they were never found again. In fact, there's a disturbing number of missing person cases in Mount Shasta that start exactly like that. It's terrifying. So, with that in mind, Matt stepped into the Mount Shasta forest. Every crunch of dirt under his boots reminded him of the danger. The trees pressed in tight on either side, and every so often, he'd glance left, then right, almost expecting to see a face watching him from the shadows. Still, he pushed forward. He told himself, just keep going, just finish this hike. For 3 days, Matt did exactly that. He kept his head down, walked as far as possible each day, and at night, he'd set up camp, sometimes just off the trail, sometimes deep in a small clearing. No sightings, no strange encounters, just silence. But on day 4, everything changed. The trail opened up, winding high along a mountainside. The air was thinner here, the tree cover sparse. Matt could see for miles ahead and miles behind. It felt almost safe. But then he turned around. Far in the distance, 2 small white dots. Getting closer. His stomach dropped. It's them. The people in white. He was at least 50 miles from where he'd first seen them. That meant 2 things. 1, they'd been following him the entire time. 2, they were likely the ones visiting his camps at night. And they were still coming. Matt no longer cared about finishing the hike. All that mattered was getting away. He pulled out his map, but his heart sank. He was in one of the most isolated parts of the entire trail. The nearest town, Castella, was 25 miles away. No choice. He put the map away, took one last look at the white figures closing in, and started running. He ran for hours. Even when they were no longer in sight, he kept running. Even after the sun set and the trail became a blur of shadows, he ran. Only when the forest turned pitch black and he couldn't see the ground beneath him did he finally stop. He pushed deep into the woods, hundreds of feet from the trail, until he found a clearing. He set up his tent, surrounded it with a perimeter of sticks, zipped himself in, and kept all his gear on in case he had to run again. For hours, he lay there. Silence. No footsteps. No whispers. Finally, exhaustion began to take over. And then, crack. A stick snapped. The whispers came back. All around him. Before he could move, his tent exploded with light. Someone was shining a flashlight directly at him. Then, darkness. Silence. Matt's instincts took over. He tore from his sleeping bag, burst from the tent, screaming and swinging his knife wildly. A stick crunched behind him. He spun around, just in time to see a dark figure rushing at him. Matt ran. Branches tore at his clothes, slammed into his face. He tripped, fell, scrambled back up, running on pure adrenaline. After 5 minutes of blind sprinting, he stumbled into the base of a fallen tree. It rested against a rock, creating a small hollow beneath it. Without thinking, he slid inside, facing the direction he had come from. A light bobbed in the distance. They were searching for him. The figures drew closer, closer, and then, unbelievably, they passed right by him. Matt stayed under that tree the entire night. Even when daylight came, he waited for hours before crawling out. He never went back for his gear. He just ran, straight to Costella, then hitchhiked to the town of Mount Shasta. There, he told the police everything. Months later, when Matt followed up, the authorities told him other campers had reported stolen food and gear in the area. But no one else had been stalked like him. To this day, Matt has no idea who the people in white were, or how they kept finding his camps, deep in the forest, in total darkness, without ever alerting him. If you want, I can tweak this further for pacing, adding natural pauses for an AI voice so it sounds even more like a human storyteller. That way, your voiceover will keep the suspense building.